Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video. Don't run, don't hide, don't be shy. Just like, comment, and please subscribe.
Let me dealing with the stress, let me dealing with the pain. Trying to find a way.
So let's get into the final segment, and that is going to be Superman and the Fantastic Four. I wanted to review both movies because I actually saw both opening weekend. I saw Fantastic Four just this past weekend, and then I saw Superman 2 weekends prior. I think that the movies have been, pitted against each other for a while, just because we knew that they were coming out within the same month. So obviously DC's in the slump, Marvel Disney's in the slump. So the summer definitely needed a win when it comes to superhero movies. But we're gonna break down Superman first because it came out first, and then we'll go over to Fantastic Four and get over to the comparison part. So, Superman. I like Superman. I know that Superman gets a lot of, it's doing well. You know what I'm saying? You can't be too mad. I don't think it's ever, it's not going to crack $1 billion, guys. It's not. But that's not what it needed to do. It didn't need to be $1 billion film. What it needed to show is that people are interested in DC projects. They are interested in a world with DC characters. They just don't trust, respectfully, Warner Brothers because they've been fucking it up for so long. Same thing with Marvel. Fantastic Four was a win that they definitely needed because a lot of the issue is that people don't trust spending their money on these lackluster projects. So, with that being the case, with Superman, let's start off with the plot. So, Superman basically is the story of Clark. Well, it's the story of Superman and his first real big struggle when it comes to protecting planet Earth and him upholding his ideals of truth, justice, and the human way. And also the struggle of him going up against Lex Luthor, whose entire plot of the film is basically to kill Superman. Now, I'm kind of crossed and a little bit in between opinions right now when it comes to Superman, and the only reason why is because there's the comic book side of me, or I can say, the fan of the actual content that really can appreciate the way that this movie was done. The fact that we didn't have to sit through another origin story, and we didn't have to go through a very slow beginning before we finally saw him don the suit and start taking flight. We're seeing all that the first 15-20 minutes of the movie, which I thought was really cool. But then there's this, because again, I do write stories, so there's a storyteller side of me that's kind of like, well, even though I can appreciate this as a fan of Superman, I can't tell other people that they have to be okay with the fact that they don't get the introduction. Which we will talk about this because there's actually Superman and Fantastic Four are very similar in the sense that they both are these introductions to these worlds where they kind of just throw you into the middle of how everything has been. You don't see the very beginning. You kind of are just thrown into it. They give you enough context so that you're filled in, you're up to speed, but you are still learning about these brand new worlds. But I think that and we'll get to Fantastic Four when we get to that, but I think that with Superman especially, I definitely see why certain people had issues with the fact that they just kind of felt thrown in, because I think it would have been much more appreciated if we got some sort of montage or some sort of, maybe it just being able to see and witness what it is that Superman was doing in those early years, so that way we'd be able to kind of get a little bit more feels when we finally do see him lose, because that's supposed to be a big deal in the beginning of the movie. But not to get too off kilter, the plot was the flow of the story. A lot of people complained that there was too much going on. There was too many fights. There was too much happening. I don't agree. I think that it was just enough going on while still taking the time to make sure that you still understood what was going on and that it wasn't just assuming you knew everything. They still would explain things. Granted, certain times they would tell instead of show, which is always, sometimes it's a no-no, but when you have budgets and time frames and things that you need to consider, sometimes for brevity's sake, you do have to just tell. And that's okay sometimes, but I feel like this movie did do a lot of telling instead of showing, but they did show a lot, which is why I do understand and see where the issues come from. But me personally, that didn't bother me. It's very simple. It's not complex. It's not hard for you to follow. It's definitely made for the family to be able to watch and enjoy. So I did like that about the movie. So onto the characters. David Corn said Superman, dope. I thought that he was imposing when he needed to be, but also still human, which I loved that they made him more human. Because to me, I feel like that's what's supposed to make Superman stand out, is that he has all of this godlike power and he chooses to always do the right thing, which is supposed to be a symbol to, at least at the time when he was created, Americans. If he could do this, you could do this too. You can stand for something. You can be good. You can choose to be that. Which I felt like was kind of missing in other versions. Obviously, the Christopher Reeves Superman has that in its movies, and it embodies that. It's the gold standard when it comes to Superman movies. But I do feel like, especially because obviously we have the advantage of the day and age we are with the technology that we have with special effects, I do feel like, visually speaking, this is probably one of, if not the best Superman that we've ever gotten, hands down. I mean, okay, obviously when it comes to badassery and pure chaos and destruction, Man of Steel it's really hard to top Man of Steel. You know what I mean? It's really hard to top Man of Steel, or even Batman v Superman if you want to throw that into the mix. But in terms of a pure Superman movie that embodies the character, and not only is what he's doing cool, but it gives you that sense of hope, look no further than 2025 Superman. But yeah, David Corn Sweat, he was really cool. I don't think he was too emotional. I feel like he was emotional at times. We'll talk about this in a spoiler episode. There was a certain thing that I wasn't necessarily a big fan of, but we'll get to that later. Crypto, adorable. I have a golden retriever. Her name is Suki. She's adorable, but she is a pain in the ass when she wants to be. And there was just, I couldn't help but see Suki every single time Crypto would fuck up. Like, I couldn't help it. And that might be a bias on my part, you know what I'm saying? Also because I was able to see my dog, who I also have love with, you know what I'm saying, all my heart in the world, but also know that she can be a pain. So that was really cool. Lois was dope. Me personally, like, I bought the relationship. Don't get me wrong. Like, there was nothing wrong with the casting. There was nothing wrong with their dynamic per se. I just don't feel like that the chemistry between the two was just so magical that it was just so noteworthy. It was just like, okay, that works. No, you know what I'm saying, problems or negatives. It's just kind of, okay. Loved Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy Olsen was a surprise takeaway when it comes to this movie. I don't know who decided to just make him so relevant, but we'll talk about that when we get to spoilers. Lex, sipping on that haterade. Massively drunk off the haterade. I thought that Nicholas Hoult, Lex Luthor, was dope. I like the fact that he struck this balance between being this imposing badass, but having this when he got really angry, you could tell that his anger is almost childish, very immature. Which to me, I felt when you can show that flaw in a villain, especially when he's really really imposing, I think it just kind of humanizes them, which is cool to me because it's fun. There was a scene that was kind of funny, but we'll talk about that in spoilers. But overall, I thought that Lex Luthor was dope. I thought that the engineer was dope. She was cool. I love a certain scene that she has when she's fighting against Superman and Ultraman. While nothing too noteworthy within this first film, like most people can see that there's clearly some foundation and some building blocks that are being built when it comes to Ultraman as a character. But yeah, I think overall, I think that David Corenswet is probably my favorite iteration of Superman as of right now. I think that his scenes were just really, really inspiring. It wasn't just about him fighting. Some people are saying it's an overcorrection of Man of Steel, whatever. Because to me, my favorite thing about seeing a superhero and what always makes what they do so impressive is that they're handling the threat while distracted because they're primarily saving people. And to me, that's just like, that's always such a flex when the superhero is able to save everybody and beat the bad guy. But I felt like it was just really, really dope. The film was just constantly vibrant and energetic, which to me is really, really important because it gives it replayability. I don't have to skip 30 minutes into the movie and to get to the good part because all of it is the good part. So I really, really like that. But I think all in all, like Superman 2025 was really, really dope. Mr. Terrific had no business being that raw. I've always been not a huge fan of Mr. Terrific, but knowing what he was, and especially in the Justice League Unlimited cartoons, I always felt like Mr. Terrific was really cool. So it was nice that they were able to give him the shine that he deserves. I can definitely see that he's going to be getting some sort of either spin-off series, or even if he doesn't get a spin-off series, but he's just a frequent reoccurring character, that would make me happy. But all in all, I think that this was a really, really solid start to the DCU. I don't think that you really could have done, other than a couple of maybe tweaks to the beginning of how they launch us into the universe, you really, really can't complain about how the movie went. It was such a good time. And I feel like that is really missing in today's superhero movies, is that a lot of times we're so busy trying to make sure that the movie sells a certain number that we're not making sure that the primary thing, which is the audience, is entertained. And Superman is entertaining all the way through. I can turn it on, and from minute 1 to the final minute, I think it's like 2 hours and some odd minutes, maybe 15 minutes or something like that. There's not a single boring movie in the entire movie, which I think is very noteworthy. So that's it when it comes to the spoiler-free section. So now we're going to dive into a couple of the spoilers, because Superman, while I love it, and if I had to give it a rating, I would give it a 7.8, 7.9 out of 10. I think that it was really, really good, but obviously in terms of my enjoyability, I would say it was a 8 or 9 out of 10. But if I have to be critical, I would definitely say that there's a couple of things that need to be addressed when it comes to Superman, just for it to be in that 8-9 category. And to me, we'll start off with one thing that I did like that I didn't want to spoil when we were talking about Lex Luthor, but there are certain complaints about how him using the codes to fight a being like Superman who's so strong and so fast, it doesn't make any sense. Now, to me, I can't remember if in the movie every code is just one solitary move. But if I remember correctly, Lex Luthor was giving codes in combinations. So I'm assuming, especially there's another quote from one of the staff members that are working for Lex. They're saying that Lex has been studying Superman for 3 years. So To me, I took that as Lex Luthor is so egotistical that number one, he has to be the one in the driver's seat to say, I'm the one that killed Superman. But number two, his mind is so sharp that although, yes, he's human, if you know how smart Lex Luthor is in the comics, you know that he's like not quite Reed Richards, but he's pretty close. He's on that Tony Stark, Batman type of super crazy intellect, and I completely can buy that Lex Luthor can outthink and be able to outprepare Superman with his clone robot. So I thought that was actually pretty dope. I thought that was a pretty cool thing that they put inside of Superman. I do think that, you know, kind of going to Superman. So there was one thing that I didn't like when it comes to David Corenswet, Superman, and it wasn't necessarily what he did, but it was what he said. And it was the whole speech at the end when he was up against Lex. I don't think that the speech itself was bad. I just feel like it went on a little bit too long. I feel like when you're going to come out and say something that's that cheesy and corny and, you know, hokey, you got to try to minimize it to try to make it sound somewhat realistic. And to me, it just felt like for a second, like Superman was in this moment and he just kind of turned to the camera and was like, and I stand for truth and justice. And I do this by putting my boots on one strap at a time. And you know, I have my struggles too, but I choose to be good. And I'm going to do right with this power. And I think that's great. I think that that's really cool, but it sounds corny. Like it really sounds corny. I just really wish that they could have, because this is the thing, you can get that same message across and not make it sound so hokey. You know what I mean? So I feel like if you just rework that. Also, I'm not really bothered by Crypto knocking out and smashing Lex all over the place. Again, this is supposed to be a comic book movie. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, Lex should definitely have major injuries, you know what I'm saying? But, I mean, whatever, he survives. I do wish that we did finish the conversation, though, between Lex and Superman, because getting a more, especially because we didn't get any backstory, we don't see the thing that started Lex Luthor's hate for Superman. I felt like that dialogue there could have been a very nice segue to be able to see what it was that Lex Luthor was actually thinking and why he hates Superman. Okay, yeah, sure, we get it. Like, they should be praising him for his intellect and how ahead of his time he is versus praising Superman because he can bench press a building. You know what I'm saying? I get that, but I think that we could have gotten a little more. We could have gotten a little bit more. It was just those things. And that's the big thing that I think is the problem with, even though there's a lot of entertaining scenes and there's never a boring moment, the one problem there is with this movie is that there's not enough time for us to be able to let things ride and let things be able to kind of breathe, so that way we can really see and really be able to feel what these characters are experiencing in that moment. Because again, having that scene where Superman and Lex are having that confrontation, having the scenes where Superman and Lois, you know what I mean, where they're having that emotional moment where the public is turning on him and he's, you know, trying to figure things out. Like, you know, not that it was always joking, but the scene didn't get the time that it needed to breathe. And you gotta sometimes give scenes time to breathe so that way the audience can feel, okay, no, this is serious. This is setting in. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be too long, but it has to be long enough to where the audience doesn't feel like this is going to either be played off as a joke or this moment doesn't necessarily mean anything. But one other thing that I did not like when it comes to the Superman movie was the reveal that Clark's parents are evil. I mean, it's hard to say that they're necessarily, well, evil. I mean, they're dicks for sure, because they basically said, oh, the humans are stupid, they're weak, so you'll be able to go there and have a harem of women and, you know, just go crazy, bust loads everywhere. But To me, I felt like they need, not that they need to, but it would be better if it was, instead of his parents are evil, his parents are desperate. His parents, maybe there's more to the message. Maybe, because again, it's still very ambiguous because we just told by Mr. Terrific and Lex Luthor in confidence that it's supposed to be real. And don't get me wrong, like, to me, it's always a telltale sign that is supposed to be a real scene to be taken seriously when the character doubles down and is in either closed doors or talking to themselves or among company that they have no reason to lie to. If they then confirm then there again that it's real, usually that means that it is. I just don't feel like it was that good of a reveal. I don't feel like it was necessary. I think that it was beautiful how they ended it, and they wrapped it up by having the replacement of his images that soothe him be the sound of his Kryptonian parents now being his Earth parents, Ma and Pa Kent. Which, holy shit, cannot believe that I just skipped over Ma and Pa Kent. Such a wholesome couple. They remind me so much of my own grandparents. Just mild-mannered, down-to-earth folks. You know what I'm saying? They go to church on Sundays. They try their best to teach their children to do the best that they can, and you know they're just taking things one step at a time. But yeah, I loved Ma and Pa Kent. But again, going back to the Superman's parents, I just felt like it was an unnecessary change. I think that it would be nice to just hear that Superman didn't just have dicks of parents, but in the grand scheme of things, if it does not change, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Hell, you could have a scene where if they end up doing the Brainiac story, maybe Clark Kent, I'm sorry, not Clark Kent, Jor-El and whatever his wife's name is, maybe they're surviving in that city that's in a bottle that Brainiac has, and Superman end up getting to save them. That could be cool. That could be real, real cool. So my last thing is not necessarily about the movie, but it does raise some questions that I have for when it comes to the DCU. So if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember where I saw this, but I think they said that Superman was supposed to be about 30 years old in this movie, which is cool. I'm totally down with starting out with him young, and then as he, starts off a little bit more mature, he gradually progresses and becomes more of the stoic and stern Superman that we're used to seeing. And then he actually would have earned that title because we know what he went through to go and be that stern and calm, controlled Superman. So one thing that I did want to touch on when it comes to the Superman movie, it doesn't really have as much to do with the Superman movie itself that it does to do with the DCU. So with the success of Superman, I'd imagine that we're going to have a Batman movie and a Wonder Woman movie coming down the pipeline. I want to say that was announced. I want to know how much of James Gunn's original plan he still plans on doing, because to me, the plan should be shot in terms of at least with Batman. So let me back this up a little bit. So my concern right now is the timeline when it comes to Superman and Batman, and then if you throw Damian Wayne in the mix as the first Robin. Don't get me wrong, I'm hyped to see Damian. I feel like he's probably one of my favorite Robins. He's probably number 2, right after Dick. Pause. But that being the case, to me, I feel like it's really, really weird to have Batman and Superman are around roughly the same age. If Superman is roughly, I think he was reported to be about 30 years old in this version. Excuse me. But if Batman and Superman are roughly the same age, I want to say that Superman was reported to be around 30 years old. How is that going to work when it comes to Batman if, again, they're the same age? Because if I'm not mistaken, Batman probably started when he was like 25. Maybe he started at 30. I'm not sure if it was ever exclusively stated, but we'll just say 25 at the youngest. He started at 25. 5 years later, he's with Damian Wayne. That just seems a little bit strange. So we've already gone through Tim and Jason and Dick, and now we're already at Damian. Even if you want to say, let's say that because to me, the only way that you could really realistically make it make sense and not piss off the fans, in my eyes, is you start off with Dick, then maybe the second movie or third movie, we introduce Jason, we get the Death in the Family live action movie and actually get a true adaptation. That, I mean, the animated movie is great, but I want to say that in live action. I'm sorry, I do. So get a live action Death in the Family. And then from there, we get Damian Wayne as the official Robin moving forward through the DCU. Now, yes, it's going to take time. It's going to take movies to be able to set that up. But I just can't see how you just cut all three of those Robins out. Even if you want to say, you know what, we got Damian, we have Dick, and then we have Damian, pause. But to me, trying to just X out Jason when his Death of the Family story arc is just so integral to the Bat family and how they function and the way that they move, I just feel like that's just a massive disservice to the fans. So that's just my one concern. Again, it has nothing to do with Superman, but I just wanted to throw that out there. But that being the case, I think that Superman sits at about a 7.8. I thought that Superman was, again, inspiring. A little bit corny at the end, but overall inspiring, so I really, really liked him. Lex Luthor, there was a scene where he gets he's knocking over the pens while he's angry about Superman escaping, and then while he's arguing with his staff, he knocks over the pens again after they just collected it. I just thought that was funny because it just shows that as genius as Lex is, when he doesn't get his way, he turns into a petulant child, which is always fun to see when the villain starts to lose it. But again, all in all, I think that it was a really, really cool movie. The power scaling was a little bit off because, you know, we're saying that Superman is supposed to be this weaker version, but he's flying out of a black hole. So that, to me, like, black holes, as far as I understand, is one of, if not the most powerful force inside of our universe. So the fact that he's able to escape that, but we're worried about some other things, just doesn't sound congruent. But again, not a huge thing, because you could always say that it's a parallel pocket universe, whatever the case may be, when Superman ends up getting trapped and we get to meet Metamorpho and we get the whole scene with Kryptonite and all that stuff. Like, that stuff is cool. And you could say that maybe the physics are different, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me thinking too much. But yeah, all in all, I think that Superman was a really, really good time. It sits at a 7.8 for me. If you guys have seen it, why don't you go ahead and let me know what you think inside of the comments down below. If you have not seen it, when do you plan to see it? Are you going to see it when it comes out on streaming, or are you going to go out and take the family and, or maybe sneak off and go see the movie by yourself? I'm not judging, but let me know what you guys think. Let's move on to the Fantastic Four. Hey guys, it's Tony with the TD World. Thanks for checking out this video. Remember, don't run, don't hide, don't be shy. Just like, comment, please subscribe. See you next time.
For me dealing with the stress, for me dealing with the pain, getting trying to find a way.